off or put on silent mode to ensure the smooth running of the program. Announcing the arrival of Dato Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, Honorable Rector of International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, Honorable Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf, Founder and President of Cordoba House, Professor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. Announcing the arrival of Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf, Founder and President of Cordoba House, Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Yusuf, Director of Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement, and Dr. Ahmad El-Muhammadi, Deputy Director of Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement. Please rise. You may be seated. Yang berbahagia Datuk Profesor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, Honorable Rector of IIUM, Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Shukran Abdul Rahman, Dean Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences, Yang berusaha Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Yusuf, Director of Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement, Your Excellencies, Representative from Diplomatic Corps, respected scholars, ladies and gentlemen, participants of special lecture titled Islamophobia in Contemporary America, Understanding the Phenomenon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Salam sejahtera, salam Malaysia Madani, and a very good evening to all. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, it is truly an honor and privilege to welcome each and every one of you to this special lecture titled Islamophobia in Contemporary America, Understanding the Phenomenon. This timely and crucial discussion is initiated by the Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement in collaboration with Stratsea. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, without further ado, let us begin this ceremony with an invocation to seek blessing from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Therefore, I would like to invite Al-Fadil Ustad Muhammad Shukri Abdullah, Imam Sultan Haji Ahmad Shahmos, IIUM, for the recitation of dua. Tafadhalil mashkuran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي فيها معادنا واجعل الحياة زيادة لنا في كل خير واجعل الموت راحة لنا من كل شر اللهم إنا نسألك عيشة هنية وميتة سوية ومردا غير مخز ولا فاضح اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما ولا تجعل فيما معنا ولا شقيا ولا محروما اللهم إنا نسألك إيمانا كاملا يباشر قلوبنا يقينا صادقا حتى نعلم أنه لا يصيبنا إلا ما كتبت لنا واجعلنا راضين من الرزق والعيش بما قسمت لنا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين قبل الله منكم.
Jazakumullahu khairan Al-Fadil Ustad Shukri Abdullah for the recitation of the dua. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, may I now invite the Honorable Rector of IIUM, Datuk Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, to deliver his welcoming remarks. Please welcome Yang Berbahagia Datuk.
Thank you, Sister Moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Our dear guest speaker, Imam Feisal, and fellow academics, brothers, sisters, on behalf of the International Islamic University, Malaysia, IIUM, I would like to welcome you, Imam Feisal, to this place which I don't think is unfamiliar to you. You have been here before. And of course, welcome to this building, this building named after your late father, Abdul Rauf building. And so welcome to Malaysia. But I have not met you for quite some time. So it's a pleasure to meet you again. I think the longest time we spent together, I think during the Tun Abdullah Badawi session, when we had that regular meeting on the Sharia compliance, Sharia index, yes, the index. So it's nice to see you again. So one I heard from our mutual friend, Tan Sri Hashmi Agam, got your number from him, and I called you. So, of course, when I heard that you're in town, the first thing I said, I must get you to speak. And I know you can speak on many things because Imam Faisal is an active, very active intellectual activist, well known throughout the world. So I thought that, well, because we just established in this university a center dealing with the phenomena of Islamophobia, so I thought that would be a good thing based on your experience there, your encounters there. So I discussed with the head of that center, Dr. Daniel Yusuf. So why not? The topic Islamophobia in contemporary America, understanding the phenomenon. The word is used very widely, but I think not that many people really understand what do you mean by that term. So today I think we are fortunate to have Imam Faisal to speak on this topic. I'm sure he will enlighten us. I've read several books, but I was in America, I think, when Bernard Lewis wrote the book, What Was Wrong with Islam? And, one of the most interesting responses to that book was a book by Imam Faisal. So to the question, what is wrong with Islam? He wrote a book, but what is right with Islam? Wonderful. Right. So I will not waste any more further the time. So welcome to this meeting. And can I just invite to it? Okay. So back to you. So we are looking forward to your presentation. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And for that, you're all invited to iftar after the program.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, for the insightful welcoming remarks. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, before we begin this special lecture, it is my privilege to invite Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi, our esteemed moderator for this session. Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi is a highly respected scholar, serving as the Deputy Director of the Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement, and a distinguished lecturer at IIUM. His extensive expertise and deep insights into contemporary social political issues make him exceptionally well-suited to guide today's discussion. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi. Doctor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much also for the introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wa mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First and foremost, Honorable Rector, Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, His Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome all of you to this special lecture, CCIGE special lecture in collaboration with the Stratsea, one of the activities that we have here at the center. The topic that we're going to have today is the Islamophobia in a contemporary America, understanding the phenomenon. Before we do that, I think we're going to speak about 40 minutes or 30 minutes like that. And are we going to have a question and answer session after that, moderator? Okay. So let me introduce, first of all, our speaker today, the guest speaker today, that is Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf. Imam Faisal was among the leading voice in the Muslim leading voice in the United States. And actually, I remember he was here, I think, the early 2000s. I was a student during that time, actually. I think quite sometimes you don't come back to Malaysia, I guess. But welcome again, Imam Faisal here. Imam Faisal is the Cordoba House founder and chairman of this institution. And for the past many years, he was engaged in various outreach, interfaith dialogue with intention to forging connection of trust and mutual support. And for more than 25 years, he was also the Imam of Masjid Al-Farah in New York City. And interestingly, he was ranked among the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine, and top 100 global thinkers by Foreign Policy, and top 50 Arabs by the Middle East magazines. And as a brief background of the Imam Faisal, he was hold the Bachelor of Science in Physics from Columbia University in New York and Master of Science in Plasma Physics from Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey. He wrote several books. Among those works that he is working on is the Defining Islamic Statehood, Measuring the Indexing Contemporary Muslim State. I think this is in 2015, published by Belgrade. And other book is Moving the Mountain, A New Vision of Islam in America. I think if you are interested to learn more about his thought, then you can go to this one. And the other one is the What Right with Islam and What is Right with America. So I think that he is I would say, is the most credible person to speak on this issue. So it is my pleasure to have Imam Faisal. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. My dear brothers, special guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. After 9/11, I was invited by many organizations in the United States to speak about Islam. Churches, synagogues, universities, the US Congress. And I would usually give a brief 15-20 minute talk about the creed and the rituals of Islam, and then followed by questions and answers. And I used to answer all these questions. And I became quite proficient in answering all these various questions. But then in December of 2011, I was invited to a church in Greenwich, Connecticut. And a lady there stood up and said, "What can a good Christian lady like me do to help?" And that was the question that I did not answer satisfactorily. So I spent a year asking myself, if I had all the resources available to heal the relationship between the United States and the Muslim Ummah, how would I do it? So basically what we did was, and I had help in this with the ex-mayor of Aspen, Colorado, whom I visited when I was invited to visit the following summer of 2002, and I met him there, and he approached me with a proposal and asked me for my opinion. I gave him my opinion on it, and it was the idea to invite religious leaders to places where there were conflict between those religious communities. And I said, well, that is a necessary part of the solution, but it's insufficient. So he was a little irked by it. He said, why is it insufficient? I said, because that alone will not help resolve the problem. Unless you can get political traction by those who have political power to turn the needle, you will not have any achievement. So then he began to work with me, and he helped me figure out. And what we did was we looked at the issues that caused the divide or the tension between the Muslim Ummah and the West and the United States in particular. We divided into 4 categories of problems. First was the political issues, of which number 1 was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, later on compounded by the US invasion of Iraq and of Afghanistan. But these are the number 1 issues which cause a lot of tension between the West and the Muslim Ummah. The second was the role of the media and education in shaping and sustaining the perceptions of each side about the other side. The third issue was what I call the insufficient assimilation of Muslim immigrants in Western countries. There's more of an issue in Europe than in the United States, because the United States is a nation of immigrants, but Europe is far more what is called monocultural than the United States. So in countries like France, especially in Germany, in Holland and Denmark, you see these issues where the Muslims have not assimilated adequately. And the fourth category is some what I call legal issues. Among them, do Muslim women have to wear the hijab? Big issue in France. Or do Muslims want to establish, to convert Western societies into Islamic states? Yeah. So we addressed some of these issues, and because this requires the help of governments, I was invited in 2004, 2005, I think, by the IDFR. They had this thing called Who Speaks for Islam, Who Speaks for the West? And I came in 2005. Pa'ala was, of course, attending it. And so I had an occasion to approach Pa'ala and ask him, this Abdullah Badawi that is, for his support for our initiative. He said, I will support this because I myself have been approached by Western governments to see what we can do to help. And I know you're like my brother, etc. My father was his ustaz, he calls him his ustaz. So that's how we started with that. And then we started this project, which I invited Professor Osman Bakar to participate with us, which was how to define an Islamic state. Out of that came that book, which he called Defining and Measuring Islamic Statehood. That's one of the most complicated projects I've ever done. And that book was one of the most difficult books to write, because we invited scholars from different countries, and then we had them discuss this subject. How do you define what is an Islamic state? Because Dawla Islamiyya, this term, became very popular in the 20th century, was made popular in the beginning by Rashid Rida and the Islamic Brotherhood movement, but nobody has defined what an Islamic Dawla Islamiyya means. So we figured if you cannot measure it, if you cannot define it, you cannot measure it, and it's meaningless. So that was the project. Anyway, so these are the things that we did, and we did projects in each of these areas. And in fact, one of the projects that we are now trying to do is one that came out of a book that is being published by IIUM Press. They promised it will come out in the first quarter, but I checked with them lately, and they say we're coming out in May, in time for the KL Book Fair, apparently in May. It is called Towards a Minority Islamic Fiqh in the United States of America. Because what I believe needs to be done in the Western countries is we need to have a local fiqh, a jurisprudence for Muslims in America. And this is what happened in the history of Islamic thought. When Islam spread from the Hijaz after the death of the Prophet to North Africa, to Turkey, and eastwards towards Iraq and Persia, etc., they had to adapt Islamic jurisprudence to the local situation. This led to the rise of the madhabs of Imam Abu Hanifa in Iraq, of Imam Malik in North Africa, of Imam Shafi'i in Syria and in Egypt, etc. And also as Islam spread throughout the rest of the Muslim world, or the rest of the world, it adapted itself to the local situation. For example, in Malaysia, what happened was the law was the Quran and the Hadith, then the Firman of the Sultan, who was the lawgiver, and then Adat Melayu, the custom of the Malay custom. So, because Ada or Urf is considered Shara'i when it does not conflict with the Quran and the Hadith. So what we need to do right now in the United States is to establish what I call an American fiqh, which really is like Quran, Hadith, American law, and Adat America. Okay, the custom of America. And this is an important part of the localization of a religion. See, Malays did not, before they became Muslim in the 1400s, they were Hindus, like the Hindus in Bali. And then all of a sudden, after that, the Malays became Muslim and became so Muslim that when I came to Malaysia with my father in 1955, when Chinaman converted to Islam, they didn't say Masuk Islam. They said Masuk Melayu. He did not enter Islam, he entered Malayness. Okay, he became Malay, Masuk Melayu. This is how much Islam and Malayness were identified, so much so that after the Merdeka and the crafting of the Constitution, Malaysia is the only country in the world which states that a Malay in the Constitution, a Malay is a Muslim. So this shows how the process by which a faith becomes local. So, for example, Turks do not regard Islam as an Arab religion; they regard it as a Turkish religion. Egyptians think of it as an Egyptian religion. There was no Pakistan 100 years ago. Pakistanis think of Islam as a Pakistani religion. So we need to make Malays think of Islam as a Malay religion. So we need to make Islam an American religion, a French religion, a Norwegian religion, an Italian religion. And the way to do that is by creating a fiqh for each of those countries. The reason why we call it a fiqh, not a madhab, is because over the last century, in almost every Muslim majority country, when they were not purely one madhab anymore. Take Malaysia, for example. I read recently that the Minister of Religious Affairs said that Malaysia is a Shafi'i country with an Ash'ari theology. Right? Well, it's not true anymore. Why? Because although you are Shafi'i in some respects, Malaysia is the #1 country in the world on Islamic financing, Islamic bonds. Now, the essence of Islamic financing is a hila, a legal fiction to get around the prohibition of interest. And the method is this: because Islamic law permits simultaneous buy-sell agreements. I can agree to sell you my house right now for $100,000 and buy it back from you a year later for $110,000. So essentially, what the Hanafi jurists, Hanafis were very big on legal fictions. They came with this legal fiction to permit interest. They don't call it interest, they call it, you buy it and you sell it at a different price, which is okay. So this is the method. So today, if you want to a bank Islam credit card, for example, or any Islamic loan for your car, you'll have this lease saying you agree to purchase this land in God knows where, in Pahang or Negeri Sembilan or something, and sell it back to them for whatever. This is the way by which Islamic banking is done. And Imam Shafi'i was adamantly against hiyal. He was very much against legal fictions. So the fact that Malaysia is the #1 country in Islamic financing, Islamic bonds, it means you're not, and you're using a methodology that is not, that Imam Shafi'i was very much against. So you are already a blend. You're a blend of Shafi'i and Hanafi law in Malaysia. The truth, and this is the same of many of all the rest of the Muslim countries. In fact, in Azhar over the last few decades, Azhar has created a database of all of the fatwas, of all of the judges and scholars throughout history. And they use it as a database so that if there's a new question right now that someone seeks a fatwa on, they can refer to these different decisions and see which decision suits their situation most accurately and use that. This is called talfiq, by the way, in classical Islamic law, where you take decisions from different madhabs to arrive at a decision. So that is why we don't call it an American madhab, we call it American fiqh, because you require this kind of flexibility as we move forward. So we are hoping to craft an American fiqh, and then a Canadian fiqh, and a French fiqh, etc., for the 20 Western countries, in the West, from the United States, Canada, to Australia, New Zealand, and 16 Western European countries. We feel this is an important step in making Islam more acceptable to those cultures and to those countries. This is how we address the issue of Islamophobia, because Islamophobia is not irrational. People have a reason for their fear. So we have to address the underlying reasons for their fear and make them realize that we Muslims are not here to attack you. We're not here to threaten you. We are here to add to your society, to enrich your society. And in many ways, we have enriched their societies. I mean, today, where you go on New York City, you have these halal carts on many corners in Manhattan selling halal food. I think I heard that the number one dish in Turkey now is doner kebab, which is contributed by the Turks in Germany. So we have contributed, in cuisine, in tastes, in many things. And we also, there are many Muslim doctors in the health industry in the United States. We are professionals, and we participate in all aspects of society. So this is what we need to do, to demonstrate to Westerners that we are members of your society. We are here to protect, to participate with you, to protect the society against any elements even from within our own community. And we want to add and to enrich and to make your countries more prosperous. So this is the approach that we have used to address the issue of Islamophobia. So I've analyzed now how we have divided the issues that contribute to Islamophobia and how we need to address them. So I hope this little introduction meets the requirement of the introduction, and now we can open the floor to questions.
Thank you very much. I think that is quite good introduction. I believe that the participant get the general idea about the thought of Imam Rauf on this one. So I would like to open for a question right now. I have a question myself, but let us begin with the question from the floor then. Okay, we have one here, then maybe we can have one more to that. Also, Professor, I have a question. Okay. Okay, so we have one here, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very pleasant evening. Thank you to the Imam for a very compelling introduction. My name is Arif, and I have two questions with regards to what you've mentioned. The first question is with regards to counter-terrorism measures, especially in the United States after the war on terror. Because when we consider the fact of counter-terrorism, it seems to be the case that constant surveillance on Muslim communities are rampant. And the issue of counterterrorism is that there's no distinction between wartime and peacetime. There's always a perpetual conflict, especially when we consider places that are termed Dar al-Harb. So how do we as Muslims, perhaps this question is more pertinent to Muslims in the West, deal with this issue of counterterrorism that is very much skewered through an Orientalist lens? That's the first question. And the second question is with regards to the notion of Sharia, because I think Muslims in general, although we know we partake in this understanding of Sharia, and we have the legal measures to understand what Sharia is Sharia sacred, or is it malleable to the dictates of the state? Because Abdullah Abdul Naim, he mentioned that, for example, there can't be a Sharia. Sharia law is a pipe dream if we are still working within the rubric of a nation state. So does this tie in with what you mentioned about an American-based fiqh? Thank you.
Well, first of all, on counterterrorism, every country in the world has to deal with security issues. That's why every country has an army, has a police force, because it's all about national security. And after 9/11, 9/11 was an attack against, the United States, and attack against civilians. So, and it was identified as coming from, Osama bin Laden, and this has resulted in a very, very strong countermeasure by the United States government to beef up their counterterrorism, initiatives and efforts as a means to ensure national security. Because the number one thing that every person wants from their government is to make them secure, to make them feel safe. And we participated with the authorities. We participated with the FBI, with the authorities, in our mosque, to say if there's anybody in our mosque who is a threat, we want him removed. We want to know about it too. So that is number one. Number two, on the issue of Sharia. The word Sharia, the concept of Sharia as you understand it today, did not exist at the time of the Prophet. In fact, the word Sharia comes from the expression Shara Allahu min ad-dini. Shara Allahu min ad-dini ma wasa bihi, Allah has ordained for you of the religion, etc., etc., etc. So it comes from a verb in the Quran. But the way we understand it today was a construct. The way we want to think of Sharia today is something which was constructed by a number of jurists, most notably Imam Shafi'i, who actually did a lot to construct the edifice of Islamic jurisprudence, what's called fiqh al-Sharia, which is the human understanding of the Sharia. So we they developed this methodology, saying that, and in fact, it was Imam Shafi'i who placed the Quran as number one and the Hadith as number two. So the Muslim jurists identified several sources of law, the Quran being one, the Hadith being one, the custom of the people, the urf or the aada being one, and then as later on as time went on, the rulings of the Khalifas, which became the rulings of the government, because government enacts laws. So government is a source of law. So you have these four sources of law, and then other sources of law, judicial activism, and there are. I wrote a book on Islamic law and I enumerated, I think, like 11 sources of which Muslims accepted as Islamic law. So the idea of Sharia has been a dynamic concept. It did not exist at the time of the Prophet the way we think of it today. It took shape over a few centuries, and major jurists really worked on developing the edifice of Sharia, and that's how we understand it today. But we who live in the modern nation state is a modern concept, because to me, the nation state is the application of the corporation into nationhood. You see, until the nation state was developed in the 16th, 1700s, you had a person who was the ruler, either a king, pharaoh, emperor, amir, khalifa, whatever you called him. It was the man, the individual, who was the ruler. And in some cases, his decisions would be law. But then the idea of creating a corporate entity, which is again another legal fiction, all right? We consider the corporation as an artificial person. So when people say, what does, that's why we had in our group that Professor Osman was, some scholars said the state has to declare Islam as a state religion. Some scholars says a state is not a real entity, it's not a real being. A state is not going to die and be resurrected and judged on the day of judgment for its actions. So a state does not say anything. It's the president or the prime minister who says something. So this application of Islamicness to a state is a very, very blurry idea. That's why we try to shed some light on this issue. And I wrote this book, which was, again, as I said, the most difficult book for me to write, to shed light on this issue. But this is where, and so even here in Malaysia, for example, all right, when you look at Sharia, you have the Sharia courts, and you have the civil courts. And as our friend Tun Hamid, who used to be the Chief Justice, said, there's a crack in the Malaysian system, because if you have some people have an issue, let's say there's a lawsuit about the inheritance of a Muslim lady from her husband or the children regarding his shares in a company. So they go to the Sharia court, they say, oh, this is a company is under the gums of the civil court. And they go to the civil court, they say, oh, this is an Islamic issue, it should go to the Sharia court. So they keep tossing it back and forth with no clarity. So there are these kinds of issues that have occurred in countries which have mixed kinds of law. So it goes to show that, I mean, even Malaysia, for example, you now have civil law in addition to Islamic law. So you're not purely, again, 100% a Shafi'i country, because you have a blend of Shafi'i law on personal status issues. You have Hanafi law on Islamic financing issues, and you have civil law on civil issues. So we are all a mixed mash or a mishmash of laws. And this is how we have to understand these things.
Yes. Let us continue. Yeah, to that.
I'm going to ask you a question that I think somebody will be bound to ask you this question if I don't anyway. It's about Mahmoud Khalil, Columbia University Palestinian activist, and his First Amendment rights. So the question is basically about that. But nevertheless, going back to the premises of the US and the founding fathers, even Thomas Jefferson theorized the possibility of having Muslims as citizens way back, right? But when you see what's happening now, and I'm asking you to a certain extent to look at the crystal ball, what's going to happen to Muslim minority rights in the US now under Trump 2.0? At the same time, when you think historically, are there limits to the idea of citizenship of Muslim minorities when we compare to Muslim majority countries in terms of what they can say about certain issues pertaining to the Muslim world? That's it.
I believe that in America, it prides itself in protecting human rights. So I have never felt any abridgment of my civil rights in the United States. Of course, you have to, you can always say something which will anger people. And that's not right for us to do anyway. We should always be careful in our speech. As the Prophet said, we have to, if you guarantee 2 pieces of flesh, I'll guarantee you paradise. The flesh between your lips, the flesh between your legs, I'll guarantee you paradise. So we have to be careful of our speech. But within the limits, I mean, America is very, very liberal in granting a lot of leeway. I mean, like as friends of mine said, the things that you can say in America, we couldn't say it in Malaysia. So we have not experienced any abridgment of our civil rights in the United States. In the case of this Khalil guy, of course, this is a situation, and the Trump administration is really an aberration. It's an aberration. It is unlike any other in the history of the United States, at least within the last century. But I'm optimistic about Muslims in America. Our numbers have increased over the last several decades. We are now very much a part of the American fabric. We are increasingly accepted in many arenas. We have Muslims in Congress. We have Muslims, CEOs. The CEO of Ethan Allen is a friend of ours, Farouk Katwari. He's from Kashmir. He's a Kashmiri. He's the CEO of Ethan Allen, very successful. We have many very, very successful Muslim CEOs, and we are part of America. We are sportsmen. Muhammad Ali, what's his name? The basketball player, Karim Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, we have. I think there's a Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, who's a football player. So we have. We're part of America. We're part of America, and we're increasingly accepted in America. Next.
Yeah. Yes. Sister, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Razi. First, I would like to give some sort of example. I think it was a few years ago that I read regarding the Muslim Malay population in Singapore. It is said that the problem as assimilation, is among others that they don't drink along with their non-Muslim friends. Okay, I think the expectation of non-Muslim, part of it socializing, and socializing involves drinking, which the Malays, the peaceful Malays don't want to do. Okay, recently in Malaysia, only a few days ago, I think the Bar Council, it was reported on the social media, the Bar Council had a vote or something, the Muslim lawyers would like to vote no more liquors in Bar Council functions. Yeah, but it was overturned because the majority of the lawyers would like to drink. Drink is part of the culture. So I think there are other things that the non-Muslim expect from Muslim when it comes to a method of assimilation. So when it comes to America, I think what sort of compromise do we have to go, to have this American thing that we can be accepted, the Muslims can be accepted as assimilating adequate enough. That was my question actually. What's up? I expect that there may be some compromise. Maybe when you wear headscarf, you cannot go. Okay, at least the full makeup is, I think, to a lot of people, it's like ninja fear mongering something. There is, I expect, probably some sort of compromise which is accepted according to something. So, what is the preview at the moment regarding that? That is my question.
Well, I mean, as far as drinking is concerned, you're not forced to drink anywhere. I mean, Trump himself does not drink alcohol, and in that respect, he's following Islamic, he's a Muslim in that respect. But I mean, in America, of course, America prides itself on giving people freedom, so people can wear their hijabs in America without being disturbed, not like in France. But you see, I mean, still, we need to give our women more flexibility. See, because I think there's a lot, most of us do not understand our jurisprudence. In Islamic law, the issue of the awra of a man and a woman has two definitions of awra, which is not totally clear whether it's one or the other. One definition of awra is what needs to be covered for the prayers to be valid. The other definition of awra is what needs to be covered in the presence of a member of the opposite gender who is a marriageable person. These are the two definitions of awra, in which it could be, which has not been clarified which is which. Now, on the issue of the awra of the women, when you look at the time of the Prophet, it was really a function of the social status, not based upon gender. It was based on the social status of the woman. If you're the Prophet's wife, you have to totally min wara'a hijab, okay? Totally not visible. On the other hand, the women of Mecca did not breastfeed. They would hire a wet nurse, either a Bedouin woman or a slave woman, to breastfeed their babies. And there are many ahadith about women breastfeeding in public without the Prophet even making a comment about it. It was normal. No, it was they would take the breasts out, and they would. In my kampong in Egypt, when I was a young boy, with the Falahi women were just, they had a slit on their dresses, and when the baby would make a noise, they would take out their breast and says, "Here, babe, shut up and take the breast and shut up." So they would breastfeed in public. Breastfeeding was in public. There's also a hadith of the Prophet where he saw a woman, one night looking for her child in a campfire, and she caught her child and she took out her breast and the Prophet said, "Do you see how compassionate this woman is to her child? Allah is more compassionate to a human being than this mother is to her child." He didn't say, "Woman, cover your breast," whatever like that. So it was acceptable for women to breastfeed publicly, who were usually either Bedouin or slave women. And in Islamic law, under all the madhabs, a slave woman can pray with her head uncovered. And the awrah of a slave woman is she can expose her head, her arms below her elbow, and her legs below her knees. So you see that the awrah of a woman was not based upon whether she was a woman, was based upon her social status. And because there's no difference between slave and free when it comes to the ibadat, the difference between slave and the free comes in the issue of punishments. The slave has punishment of the free person. When it comes to the prayers and stuff like the requirements, it's identical for slave and free women. And therefore, I conclude from this ruling that slave women can pray with their head uncovered, that a woman can pray with her head uncovered. Just like a man can pray with his head uncovered. In fact, if you're on Hajj, you cannot cover your head if you're a man. You have to pray with your head uncovered. So therefore, I believe the Prophet's wives, in the privacy of their apartments, I believe they could pray with their head uncovered. So you see, we have to understand our jurisprudence and give women the flexibility to dress in a way that is comfortable for them, that is comfortable for the society, that is acceptable to the society. See, every society has its norms. I was invited by Pa'la, Abdullah Badawi, to go on Umrah once. And he had a group of people whom he invited. One of them was a person Malay. And we went to the Masjid al-Haram. He wore a red baju Melayu. The baju Melayu and the pants, like a maroon color. The Saudi guy saw him, he flipped. He started going into him. He said, "How can you wear this color?" He was so upset. In Saudi Arabia, no man would wear red. But in Malaysia, you can wear all colors for baju Melayu. And you can pray in all of those colors. So you see, the culture is very, very important. So what is culturally acceptable here, it was not culturally acceptable in Saudi Arabia to wear red, for a man especially. So we need to understand, the more you understand the fiqh and its richness, the more we can then give women the flexibility to dress in a manner that is in keeping with Islamic jurisprudence and in keeping with also the cultural norms of the society. That's what we intend to do, inshallah.
Yeah, we have a sister here just now who wants to.
So the lady behind you, did you have a question?
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to ask, there's the concept in the Western society that the national interest or the national identity is seen before anything else. They prioritize the national identity over anything else. And in the Muslim society after the 2000s, we have seen the increase of the idea of ummatic identity and ummatic unity. So how does a Muslim, especially in the West or in America, balance both these identities without compromising each?
Are you from Pakistan?
No. Kashmir.
From?
Kashmir.
You're from Kashmir. Okay. All right. You see, even among Muslims, identities have always been shifting. Okay. Before we had nation states, people used to identify themselves based upon their families and their tribes and so forth. And it was the nation state idea what happened was when the empires, the notion of empire, where the ruler was a man, a king, all right, and then we created a corporate entity called a nation state. This was around the end of the 1800s, 1900s. So people like Kamaluddin al-Afghani said, you know, we are Muslims, okay? We don't want to be called Egyptians, Turks, this. We should identify ourselves by our religious identity. This is where the idea of a Dawla Islamiyya began, because it began as a counterpoise or a counterpoint to the idea of a national identity. So instead of a national identity based upon geography, the Islamic Brotherhood created an Islamic identity based upon religiosity. But then they attached it to statehood, which became very muddled. And nobody could even define what it meant. Nobody defined what it meant. So your identities, we have many different identities. And our identities evolve. Oh, I am a IIUM student. That's part of your identity. You're a Kashmirist, part of your identity. You're an Indian national, part of your identity. You're a Muslim, part of your identity. There are many different layers to your identity. And you cannot ignore them all without losing something. So, and you can shift identities. You can say, I'm an engineer. I'm a professor. Or you can be a professor of engineering. Or maybe you can change your employment. I'm now a chef. So you can change aspects of your identity. But the key thing is your relationship to your Lord. You see, when I was growing up, I had a problem with my own identity. I said, who am I? And because I grew up in Malaysia for 10 years, and I knew I was Egyptian, but I grew up in England for 5 years. So by the time I was like in my late teens, early 20s, I didn't know who I was. Am I Egyptian? Am I Malay? Am I English? Am I, you know? And then I'm going to America and I'm American. So who am I? What am I? And I realized that every aspect of myself was subject to change, subject to evolution, except one part of myself. That was my I, my timeless self. And I identified that with my soul, which I identified with the locus of my will and my sense of self. And that soul was created by a breath of Allah. As Allah said in the Quran when He created Adam, وَسَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. Allah commands the angels. When I have completed His creation and blown into Him of my spirit, then fall in prostration to Him. So the angels were commanded to prostrate not to the body of Adam, but to the breath of Allah in the spirit of Adam. That is what they were commanded to make sajda to. So you have to realize that breath of Allah within you is your fundamental core identity. That's your most precious identity. That is the amana, the trust that Allah has given you. Allah says in the end of Surah 33, إن عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان. We offered the trust, the amana, to the heavens and the earth and the mountains. They feared it, they rejected it, but man assumed it. So this is your identity, this is your amana, is to fulfill the purpose by which Allah established and breathed from His Spirit into you. And you take care of yourself. That part is your fundamental core identity that will never change. The rest, it can change, and it will change. Go with the change, roll with the evolution, but never forget that. Yes, sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof, for very enlightening speech. Essentially, I'm quite surprised by what you've stated, Prof. I think for many of us, we see a rise of Islamophobia in the US, resulting from the change of the government and the policies in the US, which threatens which threatens the Muslim rights indirectly or directly in the world. For me, those who is involved in some of the international law, we see a breakdown of the international order and international law. So much so that when we fight against genocide, for example, we are stereotyped or generalized as supporting terrorism. That statement itself is Islamophobic to us, to a number of us. So we do see this trend actually threatening the whole world. So from what your speech, do you recognize there is a rising trend of Islamophobia in the US? And how your approach or Islamic faith, you are handling this to tackle this rise of Islamophobia, if you recognize this in the US, Prof?
As I said, the Trump administration is an aberration. And Trump came to power because what is happening in the United States is that the white section of the population is disappearing. Not only in America, in Europe as well, okay, because they don't have enough children. You have to have an average of 2.2 children per family, and they have like 1.8, 1.6. Okay, Korea has 1.2 or 1. Korea has, I think, 0.8 or something like that. So what is happening is that because of that, the white population is actually shrinking. The white population feels threatened. So Trump is the one who recognized this fear and tried to address it by being a racist against Mexicans, against blacks, against foreigners. It's not towards Muslims in particular. He's very friendly with Mohammed bin Salman. So, he has no problem with Muslims. He just is trying to came to power because he said, I will champion the rights of the white people. But he's not providing any real solutions. Okay, all he's doing is just, getting rid of the immigrants. And the result is that, the economy is going down. Stock market has been taking like a 10% drop since he came to power. So I don't see specifically what's happening in America today as specifically Islamophobic. It's not really, strictly speaking, it's more like against anybody who is non-white. It's against all nights. In other words, Muslims are not getting as bad a rap as the Mexicans right now in the United States, or this people from Central America who usually come and work, take all the jobs that no American wants to do, picking grapes and picking vegetables and stuff like that. And the result is that all these farms are having a problem right now in the United States. So as I say, I don't see what's happening right now in America as being Islamophobically driven, as much as it is driven by antipathy towards foreigners in general, and in an attempt to protect the white segment of the population. Next.
Okay, we have here, yes.
Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
We have a saying in Balkans which says "O καλό Turcos είναι ο necros Turcos," which means a good Turk is a dead Turk. Now, when we see US politics since the creation of Israel, the Americans, they have historically been very Islamophobic. And the problem is that I do not think that a source of Islamophobia is the way how Muslims pray or how they dress, but it is more political related to Israel. We have seen the Americans, for example, that one day they declare Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani of Syria a terrorist, and the other day they go and hug with him, even though he brings Sharia to Syria. So when it comes to the United States and Canada, I'm from Canada myself, what the Western governments expect from us is to produce, number one, the loyal Muhammadan, according to the British model in British India. And second, Muslims should be apolitical. I mean, the creation of the so-called French Islam, American Islam, means that we should no longer be ummatic. We should not have solidarity with the Palestinians. We should develop a secularized Islam. So I'm a Muslim only inside the mosque, and then I go and I vote for Trump or Joe Biden, who goes and kills Muslims across the Middle East. And now the question for you, Imam, is, and we know what is the source of Islamophobia in the West. It is Zionism. It is from Senator Bob Mendes to Jack Schumer and others. They are all in one way to another. They are owned by the Zionist lobby. The question is, what can Muslims in the West do to fight this kind of Islamophobia? Because Islamophobia is something sponsored. We know, for example, after 9/11, we have people from Bernard Levis to Benjamin Netanyahu with his books. They have framed Islam and the idea of the so-called Islamic State as an evil which the West should fight. Because if we allow Muslims to go back to the Ottomans, like in time of Abdul Hamid, when Abdul Hamid was the much hated personality of the West because he refused to sell Palestine to the Jews, we had the Jewish lobby who went and attacked him. The question is, what can we do in the West to stop this Islamophobia, which comes from the Zionists? Thank you.
Like I said, in the very beginning, number one are the political problems. These are the things that have caused the conflict between the Muslim Ummah and the West, the United States in particular, and especially the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That is why the number one priority is for us to create a peace between Israel and Palestine. This is really a very high order priority. I know that the Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, has taken a personal interest in trying to see what he can do to bring about some kind of a peaceful settlement of this issue. This issue has to be resolved, and it will be resolved sooner or later. What we have tried to do, actually, we've had some conferences and so forth on this issue of Israel-Palestine, because we recognize it is very important to really address this issue. So to the extent that we can lobby for peace in the Holy Land, this is the one thing that we should do more than anything else. And we should do it. We don't have that much power in America, but in conjunction with the Muslim majority governments, I think there is a possibility to make something happen. Now we know that Netanyahu has been waging his policy because of this lawsuit against him that he's trying to run away from. The latest news I've been reading is that I think, his government may may have to be dissolved within the next few weeks or so, which is why he's waged this attack, a brutal attack against Gaza again. But be that as it may, this particular conflict has to be brought to an end. It has to be brought to an end. And whatever we can do, I mean, I don't know, we don't have the ability to lobby the Congress like the Jews do. They have a very powerful lobby, AIPAC. But if we can lobby for peace, that's one thing that I've tried to come up with, to establish a lobby in the United States that lobbies for peace. And I call it the Age of Isaiah Political Action Committee, because the prophet Isaiah predicted a time when nations will convert their swords into pruning hooks, and their spears into whatever, something else like that, an agricultural item, and nation will not wage war against nation anymore. So this prediction of the prophet Isaiah, I believe, has already dawned in Western Europe. In Western Europe, after like a millennium of wars, the 100 Years' War, 70 Years' War, 30 Years' War, World War I, World War II, all of a sudden, an era of peace dawned in Western Europe. And now Europe went from fighting each other to within 50 years creating a European common market and a European common currency and even a European Union. And no one can imagine today that France will go to war against Germany or Spain against England or any European country against another European country. So I believe this arc will happen also in the region. I believe that Israel, Palestine, the West Bank, and Gaza have the elements of something like what happened there. The Israeli economy is dependent upon Palestinian labor. The currency that is used in the West Bank and Gaza is the Israeli shekel. A lot of people don't know this. So Israel already now today controls the whole area of West Bank and Gaza. Its currency is operative in that area, so they have a common currency already. Their economy is linked. So just they need to have peace. And if you have peace, I believe within 10, 20, 30 years, Lebanon could become another entity into this, what I call Levantine Union. It can become part of this thing, and Jordan could become part of it too. With a common, maybe part of the common market, if not a common currency, like in Europe. You have some countries like Britain still has the British pound, but it's still part of the European, structure in some way. So I believe that this is what needs to be done. We need to push for that to happen, but we need to get Netanyahu out of the way.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are approaching the Iftar Ayah. We have one more question from Ambassador.
Well, thanks. Thanks very much. Since Turks were mentioned, good and bad, and many other things today. As Ambassador of Turkey, yes, as Ambassador of Turkey, there is a right of reply, I thought. So I did understand what our Mr. is saying about.
No, I said the slogan of Greeks during their war of independence, when they were killing the Turks, and for them a good Turk was a dead Turk, which meant they had no tolerance for Islam.
Yeah, I know.
You understood?
Are you from the Balkans or are you Turkish?
Yeah, I'm from Albania originally.
From Albania?
But I'm Canadian as well.
Okay, we're very good friends with Mufti of Albania.
Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah. And one of our muftis from New York, he's in a no-fly list probably, from the Albanian Cultural Mosque of Staten Island.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir, you're excellent.
So I used his words as an introduction. I know what he means. Just one issue. At the very beginning of your introduction, you most probably particularly used the word of assimilation for the Muslim societies or Muslim people in the Western society. Assimilation. You use the word assimilation particularly for the Muslim societies or Muslim people in the Western societies.
Yes.
So I think after many discussions, after many questions and your deliberations, I see that maybe the integration should be the right word into the societies, not the assimilation.
Okay. Yes. Well, yeah. Well,
because assimilation
we can
means
debate
that,
it, but I agree with you. But assimilation may be too strong a word for by some. But when I think of what happened, okay, if you look at the process of how Islam became part of the Turkish mentality, how would you call that? Would you call it, did it assimilate itself or did it integrate itself?
assimilation is a kind of word losing many of your features through the way when you are going to somewhere. At least it's something in my mind, something like this in my mind. So, I mean, integration, at least for the case of the Muslim societies in the world right now, in the modern areas, should be the right word to use that. At least that's my understanding. I'm just trying to understand your approach.
I'm willing to concede that, but the idea is what's more important is the line items which are involved in that integration. Okay, I mean, how do you integrate a society, a community into the broader society? As I've said, we have the Quran and the Hadith are the primary issues of law, and then we have the culture of the people and the law of the land. So what happened in Malaysia, as I said, was the Quran, the Hadith, the law of the Sultan and the firman of the Sultan, and the Aada or the Adat Melayu, they call it, Malay custom, Malay culture. So what happened in Turkey, of course, you had, Islam went to Turkey, you have the Quran, the Hadith, you have the firman of the Sultan, and you have Turkish culture. So it assimilated itself into, or integrated itself into Turkish culture.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Assimilation is something at some point you're going to be evaporated from the medium that you are living right now.
That's why I said I can see the point. I'm willing to.
So I think we should be somewhat careful, when we are using assimilation, because assimilation can give to the other side or to the Western societies that we want to be assimilated. We don't want to be assimilated.
Well, you see what happened, for example, the reason why I use that in some ways is because Malay culture became dominant in many aspects. So when it comes to Muslim scholars have accepted, when it comes to the dress code, all right, culture is dominant. So, for example, in Saudi Arabia, they grew the beard and stretched the mustache. The Turks shaved the beard and grew the mustache. So it was very, very different culturally but they were just as avid Muslims. But when it comes to certain aspects of Islamic law allows Muslims to completely adopt the cultural norms, as long as it does not conflict with the Quran and the Hadith. So in that respect, it gets assimilated in that respect.
I do understand. Just one last thing.
Please continue.
Yeah, but maybe in the culture you can say that. But when we are talking about the how can I say the assimilation of the societies into another society, assimilation of a group
community
of people in a society, that's something else. That's a negative connotation.
Well,
it means that the society is trying to absorb that group of people. So your examples, I do understand.
Yeah, to accept them as being part of their nation.
Yeah, but well, anyway, we can discuss this more, you know.
What's your name, sir?
Emir.
Amir, Prince.
Yes. Emir.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
I watched Kurush Osman, you know, and now I watch also I watch three of the Turkish things every week. The one on Salah al-Ayyubi, and the one on Mahmoud Fatih, and Osman, you know.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much.
Everybody watches it, so it's very popular all over the Muslim world.
Yeah, I would like to ask the last question, with permission. Yeah, fine. Yeah. As a Muslim leader in the States, Imam, I can feel that there is a very, very difficult and very challenging time. As a person who are sitting in the United States and seeing what's going on around the world inside the United States itself, it's very challenging. What is the wisdom that you would like to share with, I mean, a kind of mindset and attitude that we should have if we are living in that kind of situation? Because your situation reminds me of the Said Ramadan al-Bouti, a very tight situation. There is a wars happen, even though there is no war in the state, but you know, the war of ideas and the situation in there. There must be a kind of wisdom that we need to practice when we're living in that kind of environment. What is it?
When you practice your faith and you do dhikr, because I'm also I have taken, I was appointed as imam by a Turkish sheikh of the Khalwati Jarrahi Tariqa, Sheikh Muzaffar Rozak. He was the one who invited me to become imam in his masjid. And I also was introduced to another Sufi tariqa in Morocco, the Qadriya Buchishia tariqa. And I feel that tasawwuf is very, very important. Because the Quran actually commands us, Ya alladhina amanu, wadhkurullaha kathira, wasabbihu bukratan wa asila. O you have believed, remember Allah a lot, and do tasbih to Him, you know, every morning and every night. And there are many verses in the Quran which commands to وَسَبِّحْ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, you know. And you know, dhikr and tasbih are repeatedly commanded to us in the Quran. So, and of course we have developed, just like we've developed madhab of fiqh, we've developed also schools of tasawwuf. And I believe tasawwuf is a very important part, because what it does is that it opens our souls and our hearts to a real connection with Allah. And from this connection comes a direct guidance, an ilham, an inspiration. You see? And that inspiration is what guides us in situations that we are uncertain of. Because there is a space in our lives for that kind of direct inspiration or guidance from Allah. So if we take this guidance from Allah, that is how we guide ourselves. That's how I guide myself.
Thank you very much.
Of course, there are dreams and there are, you know, things like that we all get. Is that the last question?
Yeah, that is the last question. I hand over.
We've exhausted you. We've exhausted the audience.
Just one, if I may, you know, regarding, because I think when it comes to Western society, when it comes to Western society, you know, they want to shake hands and then they want to hug you regardless of your sex. So that becomes a part of acceptance. So how do you go about that? You know, because they just go and then, okay, hug you.
Well, you see, again, these are cultural issues. I mean, in certain situations, you go with the cultural norms. That's what I do. You know, when in Rome, as the Romans do, and then they'll comfortable and you're comfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, with that final question from Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi, it marks the end of our question and answer session. Thank you everyone for your engaging questions and thought-provoking insights. This discussion has truly enriched our understanding of the topic and provided valuable perspectives. A special appreciation to our distinguished speaker, Imam Feisal Abdul Rauf, for sharing such profound knowledge and shedding light on this important issue. We are also grateful to our moderator, Dr. Ahmad Al-Muhammadi, for skillfully guiding the discussion. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, before we proceed to the souvenir presentation, all participants are warmly invited to the banquet hall at the end of this program, located opposite to this hall for iftar. You may choose to perform your Maghrib prayer first or break your fast immediately, according to your preference. Rest assured, the iftar will remain available, allowing you to join at your convenience. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, we now invite Associate Professor Dr. Daniel Yusuf, accompanied by Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, to come to the front for the presentation of souvenir session to the Imam Faisal. Please welcome. Oh, do you want to stay there? Yeah, three of you. Basket Dr. Daniel.
Photos of Imam Faisal's late father and first rector of the university.
Oh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. And our university have all the full photographs for your, no? Really? Yeah. I'm sure they want to see too. Pictures of my father. Yeah, with Khalid Osman. Here in the university. Here. There are pictures basically. Yes. All yeah. Also, no. Thank you so much. This is Khalid Osman here. The first two rectors of the university. Here again. And here is the present one with PM Anwar over here. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dignitaries. You may now return to your seats. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, now we will proceed with the photography session to commemorate our time together at this program. I kindly invite everyone in the hall to stand, to move to the center and gather for the group photo. Yeah, we can. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to take it now, or do you want me to? Yeah, sure. We can take it now. Both of these. All right. Thank you, Imam Feisal. Mana. Ambil gambar. Jom. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, with that photography session, it marks the end of our special lecture session today. On behalf of Center for Counter-Islamophobia and Global Engagement, we would like to thank the participants who came here to the program. Now we would like to invite everyone to go to the banquet hall for the iftar. Please welcome.